Navigating an SAP transformation? We get it. By day, we work hands-on with people like you across the globe. By night, we share what actually works. Welcome to Transformation Every Day with Alexander Greb and Johannes Langguth, where your complex transformation becomes clear, actionable, and achievable.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Alexander Greb. I'm Consulting Director at CBS Corporate Business Solutions, and you're listening to Transformation Every Day, expert insights and stories on SAP and beyond. Today we are joined by someone who has spent almost his entire life helping all of us understand the tech industry better. You probably know him from Cloud Wars, where he and his famous portable whiteboard explain what's really going on in the cloud world. And as you'll hear, that whiteboard is a lot more than just a prop. Of course, we are talking about Bob Evans, who started as a reporter long before the cloud was even a thing, and he's carried that reporter's instinct with him ever since. In our conversation today, we talk about why he named his show Cloud Wars, how the competition in the cloud industry is reshaping everything, and why the CIO role has now to be centered on real business impact. We also dive into AI, both the opportunities and the challenges, and how the whole ecosystem is moving toward collaboration, co-creation, and new engagement models that put customers at the center. And one theme keeps coming back again and again in Bob's thinking, that childlike curiosity is still one of the most powerful tools we have in tech. It's what drives innovation, it's what helps us to see what's possible. So let's get into it. Here's our conversation with Bob Evans.
Alex and Johannes, I'm not as young as I used to be. I have a pretty good memory, but sometimes the different things I'm talking about and the frequency of doing some of these, you're looking into the camera, I don't have a script or a teleprompter or anything. So I thought that the whiteboard would give me a nice cover there, because on the one hand, people say, oh, that's so nice. You sort of lay out for your readers what you're going to talk about. Well, actually, it's a crutch for me. So it helps me remember what I'm supposed to talk about. And it just seemed a little bit, orthogonal to the traditional, let's put technology into everything. And I think there's a little bit of an old school thing there that I think people feel a little bit of comfort with that. Now, there's probably some people in their early 20s who say, what the hell is that thing he's holding up there? What is this, out of a museum or, the 19th century maybe, but that's okay.
It's an iPad White Edition large.
Yeah, well, it's AI powered, the whiteboards. Both, the traveling one and the one I have here, AI powered from the outset.
Wonderful. And what's also powered is this podcast by today, Bob Evans. Great to have you here. We are recording. Truly legendary voice and face in not only the SAP ecosystem, all the tech sphere, and you have quite some, and this is what's quite special in my opinion. You have quite some history with all those companies, or at least most of the companies you're speaking about. It's not that you're just looking from an outside-in perspective. You know quite a lot of them from the inside. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey?
Sure. Well, first, it's a great pleasure to be here with you both, Alex and Johannes. Thank you. I've been knocking around the tech business for a very long time. I'm a little scared because if I keep doing this for a few more years, I'll be able to say for half a century. So I originally started out as a reporter, and it was first sort of covering this new thing, personal computers were coming out. And, what are they going to do? Where's this going to go? And I had a lot of fun. The tech industry's been phenomenal, and my interest was always in. I wanted to be an author, a journalist, writing about science, and the personal computer thing came along and sort of was a nice, fresh way to get into that. And then, after a long time, I'd done different things and saw the internet come up and change things from magazines to online, and events were so powerful and all. After a while, I thought, I've been looking from the outside in at the tech industry. I'd really like to get inside because that would be fun, see what all that's about. So 2011, I worked at SAP And that was a tremendous experience. And the big idea there was to try to help them shift a little bit of how they presented themselves in the world, right? We're so good at talking about our code and we love our code so much and it's so wonderful. But there were these new business people coming in and saying, well, help me understand why I, as a business person, should be interested. So I tried to help SAP talk more about the customer stories and customer value, customer benefit. And then I went from SAP to Oracle, and I was there for about 5 years. Had a blast with that. And I just felt at the age of 60 then, if I'm not going to become an entrepreneur now, it's going to get harder when I'm 70 or 80 or 90. So why don't I do it now?
How did you come up with the name Cloud Wars? It's such an interesting name because it's so, it catches you and everybody knows it. Like, how did you come up with a name?
Johannes, I wish I had a real brilliant, provocative answer for you. I was just, I knew I wanted to do my own thing here and that the field was fairly crowded, but I didn't think nobody was sort of looking at it in this way, that this cloud thing isn't just some next sort of unimportant, and it'll be done in 2 years, we'll be in and out of the cloud. I thought this was really going to have some legs, and not just for the tech industry, but for customers. This was going to be a big change in what customers could do, what businesses could do, the pace of innovation, and, guys, on some grand scale, what the world's going to be like. How is this going to improve people's lives? So I tried to sort of take that and ratchet it up a little bit and say, okay, what's this going to be like? And then I realized you're going to have the biggest companies in the world, the most powerful, most innovative, wealthiest companies putting unbelievable amounts of money into this. It's not going to be just like you take a few customers and I'll have a few, we'll all get along. I thought this was going to be the most contentious and competitive and intense industry that the tech industry had ever seen. So Cloud Wars, and some people said, oh, you're trying to make like Star Wars. And I went, no, not really, but there's something mystical to it about the future, create the future, what's possible. And there were some tremendous personalities in there too, right? From Hasso Plattner and Larry Ellison, Bill Gates, and others, and some tremendous startups coming through. So it just seemed like something, if you're going to have a war and a battle, make it grand, make it epic. And I thought Cloud Wars had the makings to do that.
I'm not going to ask who is Darth Vader, okay?
Good, Johannes, because I'm not going to answer it.
When we're looking into the analogy that you put there, for sure everybody is firing full out of any cannon and any caliber that the people have. But I think it's quite difficult sometimes, even when you look more into more companies, not just SAP or something, but really into the whole tech industry. It's definitely challenging, probably, to separate the noise from the actual real innovation and the relevant stuff. How do you recognize what is really relevant? What is your method there? Hi there. Quick break for a short message before we go right back to the episode. Enjoying the insights and stories on transformation every day? Want to make sure you never miss an episode packed with practical tips and best practices from the SAP world, featuring conversations with some of the most interesting people in the SAP universe? Then hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform, whether it is Apple, Spotify, or any other you use. And if our podcast brings you value, we would be incredibly grateful if you could leave us a 5-star review and share it with your friends and colleagues. Your support means the world to us. Thanks so much, and happy listening.
Alex, I have I just put a lot of stock in the publicly available information, and 2 ways to approach that. One is the same stuff and blob it else is doing, and I didn't think that's very interesting for me. It certainly wouldn't be very interesting for audiences. So I was trying to take this from perspective that says, ultimately, who is growing? Who are the customers? Be the ultimate point of truth. Who are the customers giving more of their hard-earned dollars to? Because there's certainly enough competitors out there for them to. And there's a lot of very cynical people observing and running around this industry, and they'll say like, "Oh, all the vendors are the same." I just didn't think that was true, or that one company's doing well, and some people would say, "Well, that's because their marketing BS is they spend more on advertising than others." And I thought, advertising and marketing matters, but I rejected this notion that customers are dumb and that they would be duped by fancy talk or slogans or other things. So I tried to get at it, conversations with customer executives. Which were the tech vendors, Alex, really to the heart of your question, which are the tech vendors that help you do what you've already a little bit more efficiently? And which are the ones that are helping you do stuff you aren't? And I tilted toward the ones that were doing this, blurring the line between possible and impossible. Customers create the future and do things that the customers could never expect. Combination of that type of testimonial plus, a fairly rigorous look into the growth of the different public companies. To me, those were the two signals. Who are customers giving more of their money to is reflected in revenue growth. And secondly, are the underlying stories telling the world, hey, this is either a short-term blip, it's going to pass, it's not where it's falling, or is this an enduring cycle, an enduring arc that's going the right direction?
I mean, it's an interesting thing, right? To identify these patterns, to kind of be clear what is a real hype and what is, I would say, here to stay. Are there any shifts in the market 2024 to 2025 that surprise you from by applying this pattern, so to speak?
Johannes, do you know the book holding up at the Innovation? Clayton Christensen.
The Innovator's Dilemma, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. His premise, and it was really exposed, was he said, you get the innovator who gets out in front of something and is imparting enormous value, but the innovator then too often gets sucked up into the same thing that the old model allowed itself to be disrupted by, right? The innovator puts so much into saying, that the secret of truth. Well, no, you didn't. You discovered something that worked for a little bit and weren't able to sort of follow this forward. So that's one of the things that I think about all the time. Where are we on the fad cycle versus something that's more enduring? Can I go off on a tangent here for just a moment? Because I think it really matters. I think it's about 2 years ago, this huge announcement, Oracle and Microsoft, that they were going to allow their cloud up. And then just going to do that. And Oracle and Microsoft have agreed that Microsoft will run the Oracle Cloud through Microsoft Azure. And I think a lot of people say, oh, well, that'll never last. It's Microsoft's interest to do that. They can't do that. Then Google Cloud comes in. Yes, we'll offer the Oracle database. Then AWS comes in. We'll offer it. To me, that was a signal that that can happen all right? Now, it turns out that was a huge benefit for not only Oracle, but on the first earnings call after that announcement, the Microsoft CEO was asked, what led to the big jump in Azure revenue this quarter? And he said, the first thing he said was, there are a lot of our customers that wanted the Oracle database. So, Johannes, I think there's these breakthroughs and the big trends moving forward are often come about when it isn't just innovative technology, but rather these tech companies saying, hey, what if some of this stuff that we thought was forbidden, we'll never, ever, ever do that? What if we did it? What if we considered it? What if we looked at different ways of combining forces with some of our competitors to make life better for customers? And I think the impact, guys, on customers from that is going to be they're going to push back against the tech vendors and say, don't tell me that you can't do this or you won't do this, because your job as tech vendors is to make my life as a customer easier, not harder. So I think we're going to see go-to-market changes like that, partnership shifts that were never, we would have thought before that will never happen. I'm less inclined to say never anymore after some of these things. So that's where I think, Johannes, some of the most interesting possibilities are going to pop up.
Yeah, I think it's moving somewhat to an ecosystem of cloud, right? Instead, I mean, traditionally we speak as to the SAP ecosystem, but I like using your word now. It's going to be probably like a cloud ecosystem of vendors cooperating in the same space with each other, right? That's how I would take your answer, right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and one other anecdote I'd toss out here is, Thomas Kurian, the CEO of Google Cloud for the last 6 or 7 years. He had been at Oracle for, I don't know, close to a quarter century. And when he went over to Google Cloud, there were a lot of people who I think, tended to want to go with sort of the easy answer on things. They said, oh, he's going to try to make Google Cloud more like Oracle. Well, that wasn't the case at all. And one of the things that Thomas Kurian said a month after he started at Google Cloud was he was asked at an investors conference, he said, Microsoft's way up here and AWS is even higher than them. How are you ever going to catch up to them? And he said, my job is not to try to catch up to Microsoft and AWS. Of course, we want to be as successful as we can be, but that will be based on our ability to do what customers want and need. And he said, I think that what customers want from the cloud in the next 2 or 3 years is going to be wildly different from what they wanted in the last 2 or 3. And he said, we're playing for the future. We're not trying to, redefine and renegotiate the past. And when you think about it that way, it begins to align perfectly with what their business customers have to do today, which is I can't just be a slightly better version of myself and expect to succeed in a very different future. So this notion of, where is the future headed? Where are things going? How do I break out of that? Not just with technology, but how I engage with customers, how I engage with competitors, how I engage with this ecosystem. Am I willing to say, and Arvind Krishna at IBM has done a phenomenal job at this, is saying, if we make the pie bigger for everybody, isn't it okay then if we all focus more on customer outcomes instead of, can I leader in the quadrant in, 26 categories instead of 27, so we're seeing those old models crumble.
I mean, it's a very interesting thought, Bob. And I want to, zoom into that from your analyst perspective. What does that mean from an engagement model perspective for the cloud vendors? How does that even mean kind of joint customer teams or co-developing? How does the engagement model of these companies evolve in your perspective?
Yeah, Johannes, Alex, I'm going to go into some dangerous ground here, which is try to talk about something scientific. But
that's exactly the right place to do that here.
What Werner Heisenberg, right? The Heisenberg principle, right? You try to observe something and you distort it in the act of trying to observe it. So the tech industry companies that are falling behind are the ones who think that, if God created the universe, the first thing he did was create the tech industry. And then he created customers around the tech industry to entertain the tech industry. So what we see today is too many tech companies get focused on each other, and they're not realizing that these customers that they are trying to please and monitor and enjoy and align with, they're changing very rapidly too. So I laugh sometimes, guys, about this thing in the past of the tech industry. The tech industry, it was like a Pavlov's dog thing. They trained the customers to sit and wait for the upgrade cycle. Oh, the upgrade cycle. And then the customers there, just waiting to get, this new server that was 2% faster and 4% less expensive. And that was the big thing. And then another 18 months, the next upgrade cycle will happen. Well, the customers are now innovating so quickly, and as more customers that were not tech companies become software development companies, they push pressure up to the tech industry saying, hey, you're talking about 6 months ago. I'm out here. You better catch up with me. We're done. So these tech companies now, with customers, they co-create with their partner ecosystems that used to be all jumbled into those ISVs and resellers and VARs and global SIs and blah, blah, blah. All of those companies now are not becoming more alike, but they are dropping those old things of saying, I can only be this or I can be this. Their job now is to match up with the tech vendors and say, how do I help the customers do things they couldn't do before? So it's a multi-directional co-creation, co-innovation, collaboration ecosystem here. And I think the winning tech vendors up at the top of all of this in some way are going to be the ones that say, I will recombine and pair up and partner with anybody who's going to help drive better business outcomes for customers. And, along the way, that'll redefine a lot of terms. That's okay.
And how good are we actually doing that? Because it's a common accusation of, let's say, of the customer perspective to the vendors saying like, hey, you with your technology and with your cloud move, you are probably even more trying to solve your problems with that than our problems. Yeah, vice versa. The tech industries they do not really accuse them, but you sometimes hear it a lot. If customers would raise their speed of adoption, it would help everybody. So in the end, you have something like a marriage where you have the feeling that both sides are a little bit talking past each other. Is this a problem that you also see, or do you think like, I think we are, thanks to cloud, we are getting more and more to talk with the same language?
Yeah. Alex, Johannes, can I ask, do either of you play golf?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
It's a wonderful game because one of the things about golf is you can go out and spend 4 hours with people, pretty much isolated. And so there's the game, the competition, the outdoors. It's beautiful. My one cousin, Tommy, he's one of the funniest people I've ever met. And he's one of those people who can tell stories about any subject at any time to any audience. Everybody laughs. And many of his stories are about himself, but they're very entertaining. And that's one of the reasons why so many people love him. But he says this thing on the golf course is he's always talking about himself, but he'll stop for a second. He said, hey, that's enough about me. He said, let me ask you, what do you think of my golf swing? So he pretends that we're going to shift the subject, but he's back to talking about himself. And I think customers, again, are smart enough to know who are the tech vendors that are parroting a certain story, telling me what they think I want to hear. But in fact, hey, I got, this is all about you. Well, it isn't. And I think it's by our actions, by our outcomes, by our policies that, we reveal ourselves as individuals and certainly as companies. I don't mean in any way to pick at any company here, but look at AWS, right? For a decade, and they earned it, they deserved it, they were king of the cloud, right? Unquestioned. And you would look at that and say, with the lead they had, they were the category creator, the momentum, the size, the brand, the capability. Nobody will ever challenge them. Well, they had been challenged. They are, I would think, they're now the fourth most influential hyperscaler. How did that happen? And it's not because they're bad or this and that. I think they got caught up in their own stuff and they got too enamored with policies that were real good 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, but don't align with the customer demands and requirements of today. That they failed. I think they started to believe, oh, king of the cloud, I got to refit, get my new crown, get a fancier robe, get a bigger throne. And meanwhile, you had Microsoft hammering away on a much broader base. You had Google Cloud coming in and doing things, everything from AI to what they're doing in security and different ways of analytics and how they partnered a much more open ecosystem. Let's make the rules together was Google Cloud's idea. And AWS is up there like, who are these peasants here, trying to rabble rouse and mess up my thing. And all of a sudden the customers, and the numbers show it, are spending more and more percentages of their money with all the others than they are with AWS. And I don't think this is a failure of technology. There might be some cases where AWS fell behind on the technology. They fell behind on this notion of, who's the boss? Well, the boss is the customer. And I think they started to believe this, the stuff that's circulating. So I think that's an example, Alex, of we all talk, we want to be perceived as fully in line, but often we talk around each other. And when you start to believe that I'm on point, I'm never wrong in this, it's everybody else who's talking in circles, that's where the trouble lies.
When we see the hyperscalers getting more and more momentum, from at first being, let's say like hosters, how I mean that, like from being hosters to providers of services and of technology and now artificial intelligence solutions and so on. On the other hand, the former king of the hill, let's say the typical software vendors who are trying to, with their contractual constructs, not to lose influence to the hyperscaler. Who do you think at the moment and in the close future, who's the dog and who's the tail?
Well, I want to say one thing on that. It's why I focus so much of my attention on what do the CEOs of the Cloud Wars top 10 companies talk about. I know that there are many, many people in these organizations and everybody's contributions are important, but what did the CEOs say about this? I think recently when, 4 or 5 months ago, Christian Klein stepped out, there was some talk among some big government leaders and business leaders in Europe who said, oh, we have to build our own hyperscalers. We have to do that. And Christian Klein said, hey, that's crazy. So there are some things we need to do to ensure that Europe has everything Europe needs in terms of data sovereignty and privacy and AI exceptionalism and so on. But recreating what's already been done and trying to think we're going to be able to keep up is not one of them. So there's this clarity of thinking about, business models and the business models of today and into the future and how customers will think about them. So I just give Christian an enormous amount of credit for that because, you get the European economy spending 6, 12, 18 months going down that nutty road. It's just going to be that much harder to catch up in some of these other ways. So I think this new AI for Europe, these are brilliant ways to do it because that's going to make the competition better for everybody, right? So these hyperscalers now are going to face different sorts of challenges. How do we ensure that this is not a US-centric force going into the future? How do we play nice with what's going to happen in Europe, what's going to happen in South America, what's going to happen in Asia, Africa, around the world? So I just think this sense of, we were talking a little bit about kids beforehand. Kids love boundaries, testing the boundaries, and you got to let them break the boundaries sometimes. But you've also got to let them know boundaries aren't just a concept; they're real and they're there for good reasons. Now we can boundaries can be fungible. We can play with those. And the tech companies have to realize that they're very good at telling their customer, you, the customer, you have to change. You have to do this and this. The tech companies haven't always been so good about doing that themselves. I've been getting an enormous amount of talk, people saying, all this growth that Oracle's getting in the cloud, this big deal with OpenAI, that's debt-funded growth. And the other three hyperscalers all have profit-funded growth. And I don't know, somebody somewhere got all these people saying the same thing. I don't understand that. And I would like to think if OpenAI went to Microsoft and said, hey, I got a $300 billion, I'll pay $300 billion in 5 years. Do you want this? I don't think Microsoft would have said, no, because you're not big enough yet that you can pay for that all out of, your piggy bank. So guys, my point in babbling about all this is things are changing faster than ever before. And the intensity of the change is more severe than it's ever been before. So the race forward is going to go to the most open-minded who are able to juggle all these technological shifts and things that are happening with the most powerful alignment with customers and where they're headed, and to get that layer in the middle of a fantastic partner ecosystem too that can force multiply what the tech vendors are doing.
I think there are not few who are a little bit skeptic about that speed that at the moment is happening. Yeah, I remember a famous saying by I think it was Bill McDermott when he was still a CEO, when he said like, "Hey, we out-innovated anybody." There are some who say, "Okay, the tech industry at the moment and the speed they are advancing also are doing that with their customers." Where do you see that kind of, let's say, gap at the moment in possibilities on the one hand and on the other side of actual capabilities that are tangible and that our customers actually able to use?
Yeah, Alex, I think that's a very good point. It's a fair question. There's certainly been some BS in there from a lot of companies. At the same time, I think it's part of the best tech companies' job is to help inspire in customers once they understand fully, here's what the customer wants, say, okay, here are some things that might happen. Now, sometimes that might presume that, to use the SAP term, that the customer has a clean core. Well, actually, we don't. It's going to take a little while to get that cleaned up. But I'm okay with those big dreams, right? Some big talk, provided it's always supported by demonstrable commitment to, me as a tech vendor, I'm going to do everything humanly possible to make this a reality, not just talk. And then the ones that just keep talking and never deliver, they're going to get punished, and they're going to feel the brutal hand of the free market, come down and slap them very hard. So again, I think the competition is so extraordinary here. That forcing function, right? Inside a volcano, that stuff that gets shaped and formed, and it's hot as hell. And if you can't take it, that's going to show up pretty clearly. I also like the pragmatism that we're seeing more from customers who are saying, pushing back on some of the tech vendors and saying, I think it's great for you to have these dreams, but you have to adapt some of what you're doing to my current needs. And that's played out in things like that multi-cloud with Oracle and some other things we're going to see. All of these tech vendors are racing each other to see who can say the word open or openness most frequently. Well, the proof is going to come as customers test that out. So I think it's an ongoing challenge, Alex, but I really like the way it's going back and forth now. It is just not just the tech vendors, blowing hot air at the customers.
So if we sort out that playing field at the moment, and I'm talking about now, yeah, because I fully agree with you that it's changing so fast, basically with every month, yeah, with new things coming out. and since I'm, of course, having the SAP hat on myself, let's localize SAP on that playing field right now. Where do you see their position, their strengths, and their strategy? They heavily invested into their cloud momentum, into their AI momentum. Where do you see them in comparison to the other players at the moment?
Alex, one of the things that I've followed very closely for the last 15, 18 months is how is it in the enterprise application space where, you hear different people say, how many ways can you distinguish an HCM suite of products? How different can they really be? I don't buy that, but I think there's certain functional things that are going to be consistent in that, or ERP and procurement and customer experience. How then is SAP growing 50% faster than Workday and 100% faster than Oracle and Microsoft purely in the application space? I don't think it's because the others had bad products or bad businesses. What's SAP doing differently? And you look at some of the stuff they've done, and I might not get all these names right, but with Linux and Signavio and WalkMe and some of those things, right? So if you want to be an applications vendor and you just want to sell applications, that's a very vendor-specific point of view. The customers over here are saying, wait a minute. You want me to jump out of the cloud or off on-premise into the cloud? Which is the right approach for me? Well, Signavio helps unlock some of that. Linux, WalkMe, so some of these other pieces. So how do the big, what we call enterprise apps vendors, who really aren't enterprise apps vendors anymore, won't be for long. They'll be into agents, they'll be into AI, they'll be into platforms, their data companies as rapidly as they can be. So those sort of higher level functions change, how do they build underneath that? I think SAP's done a real good job with that. Some people I have heard say that, the reason SAP is growing twice as fast or 50% faster than the others is because they're forcing all their customers to go into the cloud. So that's what's triggering a lot of this. I think they still hear about 18, 20,000 customers still have not made the move. And in spite of that, you see these elevated growth numbers from SAP. Muhammad Alam, the new head of product engineering, I think he was the big driver behind, right? They did this new event called Connect. So if Sapphire is still for the traditional tech-oriented person, Connect was all for the line of business person. So this is one of these go-to-market shifts that I think is helping to distinguish SAP. Fascinating, some of the conversations there about where they are and where they're headed. I think you've got a simpler internal organizational structure, right? When I worked at SAP, and I say this with great fondness, but there were two CEOs, a very active founder and chairman, and a very active head of product development, Vishal Sikka. And when I was first at SAP and I'd meet different people, it was sort of this little thing that you had to, each person was trying to figure out with the other, whose camp are you in? And based on which of the four camps you're in, that determined how I would shape my conversation with you. So you had a lot of different agendas, I think, at play. That's not the case now. And this Christian has the company focused entirely on doing, a specific set of things. Every customer knows what that is. It's all the same. Got Carl Farbach, the chief partner officer, saying, we want to be a partner-led company. Well, that rallies the ecosystem. That gets them going. You get Thomas Sauersig, who went from head of product engineering into this whole new job to help with customer success. So I think it's almost like a flywheel across those different pieces, whereas before it was, like that little kabuki thing was pretty weird, and I don't think it was helpful, because if I felt that as an employee, I'm sure the customers felt it as well.
Yeah, I mean, what you describe is kind of the shift from just a vendor perspective towards a real, I keep saying it's a kind of an impact partnership, right? Where you mentioned toolchain components, Signavio for processes, other toolchain components for other things. But I feel that there is a big shift towards customer proximity, helping customer to interpret cloud not as a product, but as a journey to jump onto, right? That's how I would see that shift of the ecosystem that we've triggered now. Yep.
And
Johannes,
I have to add something to what Johannes said, because this is at the moment a discussion that I have in my daily business almost, unstoppingly. And it's a definition of customer success. Yeah, because you see how it's defined by purpose, which say like, okay, customer success is supposed to be adoption. Still, many treat it like customer success is sales. The moment you buy a subscription and so on, you're on the boat. There is still a way to go, definitely there, which is, of course, a main part of the job of the ecosystem. Yeah, who is responsible to take the customer by the hand and guide him and lead him, to hopefully things he was not able to do before. Where do you see the ability of the SAP ecosystem in that respect? Are they up par to the task? And if no, where should they become better?
well, Alex, there's another one of our, you've got, I used to think when I was a kid, I used to see, I always admired jugglers. How do they do that? And I wish I had forced myself to learn how to juggle, because I think in some ways that's what is happening right now. A company like SAP has to, on the one hand, you got to keep your internal engineers motivated, right? The stuff you folks are creating is wonderful and it's great, and you're the heart of the company. And then the sales organization, oh, you're the heart of the company. Oh, the customer success people, I think more and more are stepping into that role. And as any CEO of a tech company like SAP, you're juggling all those different pieces and what customers want, and you've got global regulators talking about things and fear and uncertainty about AI, all those things going on like that. I think the one point that they've got to be brutally unflinching on is exactly what you said. Because if you don't get this transition to what customer success really means, as you outlined it, Alex, none of that other stuff matters. You are that any company that is unable, or I don't think any are unwilling, I think just unable to commit whatever resources are necessary to get every single person in every single department of the company throughout the ecosystem, and then convince customers that customer success is your business outcomes going in the direction you want. If you can't do that, you are going to get slaughtered in this business. I think it was a great move on SAP's part to put somebody with Thomas Sauersig's background into that position, right? Because it clearly showed this was not something, it's not like a super sales outcome. He understood the products. He worked with a lot of customers before, and now he was able to take that. How do we match up with what customers want, with what we're delivering, and all of those pieces together? But then you get the partner element in there. How do they ensure that? Oracle has made its head of customer success also its head of partner success. So they felt that those two things can't be distinguished. They should be rolled together, so that anything that is defining partner success is also perfectly aligned with customer success, and vice versa. And I know, Alex, too, aren't there some people who say customer success, that's not my problem. That's my job is to make my company successful. It's that I think breaks down the whole notion of that misses the whole point, that this is not like selling somebody a car and saying, hey, good luck with that. Very, very different.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying, right, is that I think it's called Tayloristic view of performing software transaction has changed. Like one does sell, one does develop, one does implement, other does use. I think the whole way how the ecosystem itself interacts, right? It's like you can be a consumer, an adopter, and a developer at the same time, right? You see like lots of shifts in this direction to break those classic boundaries of the roles in a software adoption lifecycle, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Johannes. And I again, a little off on a tangent here for a sec. When I started to do Cloud Wars, 8 years ago, almost 9 years ago, there are a lot of people who said, I did the Cloud Wars top 10. They said, you cannot compare an applications company with an infrastructure company with a platform company. They said, sure, it can. There it is. It's right there. Well, that's not how it, then don't read my stuff or, look somewhere else. But I said, there's the law of the jungle, which is kill or be killed. And I thought the law of the cloud was get into as many layers of the cloud as possible, apps, platform, infrastructure, as quickly as possible, because that's what the customers are going to demand of you. And if you can't do it yourself directly, then form the partnerships that let you do that. Because the tech view of the game was there's 3 different categories. And you can be one or the other, but you can't be both. So, well, that's nuts. And that's going to be defined by the customer, not by some people in Silicon Valley inside their bubble, or by some analyst firm which finds it more convenient to have 3 different groups so I can sell 3 different services. So in the same way, internally, Johannes, to your point, really seeing it interesting across different companies, how developers that maybe were often shielded from what customers actually wanted or needed are now being immersed in this is what the customers are looking for. We don't have 18 months to do this. We have 18 days to do it. And by the way, there's going to be 25 customer representatives sitting with our development team as we go through this. And, certain developers are able to rise up to that and embrace it. And others, I think it drives them nuts. So there's going to be turnovers in those ways. Then you get the impact of how AI is changing the developer process, the developer life. So again, I come back to that thing of who's the most nimble and agile of these companies that sees it, doesn't fight it, doesn't try to preserve the past, but instead says, how do we roll this into something beautiful going forward? And the more every employee across every function in the company of the tech vendors is able to see, my job is to make those customers wildly successful. Those are going to be the winners. Same with, a database company or an infrastructure company or an agent company, anywhere up and down the line.
There have been, let me phrase it like that, there have been for sure easier times to be a customer. With, on the one hand, technology bringing new things up almost every day. On the other hand, I think there's no industry which is not heavily disrupted at the moment. Even especially from our German perspective, for decades invincible German automotive industry is heavy under pressure to transform themselves. Additionally to that, we have political complications, tariffs, wars happening, and so on. Where do you see CIOs, those decision makers, at the moment making the priorities? And are those at the moment where you see the right ones, or do you think from your perspective, hey, I think from the customer side, we should go more into these or that direction?
Yeah. Alex, this has been sort of an intersection of a lot of different forces. You've outlined a lot of great ones there. But this has been going on, I think, for some time. It always, I wouldn't say drove me crazy, probably other things are responsible for me being crazy, but that was just one of them. But this thing of when you'd hear CIOs say, my job is to, support the business with IT. My job is to align the technology with the business, because all of that presumed that the IT organization was not a part of the business. But how do you get over that hurdle? It was like this thing, this organization that is, now becoming the first point of contact that customers have with your organization and the overwhelming way in which they deal with you. You're not part of the business. So I think any CIOs who had that idea, they really should have been said, hey, you know what? We're going to change your title to Senior Director of Infrastructure because that's how you think. Go over here, do a great job. You've got the mindset. It's all great. We need a CIO who's focused on customer success, who's focused on customer challenges. Where are the customers headed? What do they like? What don't they like? How can I make things simpler, faster, easier, smarter? All of those things. When too often the CIOs were put in the position of being like Dr. No. Now I blame CEOs in part for that because the technology industry was putting out stuff that required 80 or 90% of the IT budget to be spent on keeping the stuff you already have up and running. When the cloud came along, it gave a great opportunity for CEOs and CIOs and CFOs to work together to change that. I'll spend 50% on keeping stuff running and 50% for innovation. I think AI promises to do more of that. So I think the CIOs have to be very customer-oriented, forward-looking business people who happen to have a tremendous ability to understand the potential for information technology to transform businesses, to make them smarter and faster. I think they got to be customer champions. I think they have to be fully committed to being revenue drivers in their company, not just be a cost center, because if you settle for being a cost center, well, we know what happens to cost centers.
You have to optimize, right? Yeah. Yep.
And they get beat on and ground down, and
yeah. I mean, when you focus a lot on the personality traits that such a person should have, business minded, but I feel that this is also a very big change for the established IT organization, not just on leadership level. Like, how do you think this is going to cascade down? How does the CIO function of the future look like? We spoke about the CIO, which is a person, but he or she runs a function. How should that function look like?
Yeah. Johannes, probably for 10 or 15 years, conversations with CIOs is to say, do you have your teams, do they sit in like the big IT department, or there's often it'd be, well, we're in a separate building. Or I would ask, do you have your teams embedded within the other units of the company that they work directly with? Oh no, that dilutes the focus, and I think that's one of the big things. If you keep people physically separate and by their their career priorities they're given, if you keep them isolated, they'll stay isolated. We'll get the outcomes we manage to. So I sure agree with you. This has to be top to bottom inside these organizations. And, every person in IT organization ought to be given the freedom and the latitude to say, how can I get up today or this week, can I make life better for a customer somewhere? And if they're kept hidden from that, then nothing's going to change. And I think those companies are going to suffer because they're not going to be able to compete with their competitors who are enabling and empowering the IT organization to be champions of change and growth and customer focus. It's real hard, but that's why I think the CIO can't come in with the old-fashioned IT is over here and business is over here mindset. That's deadly.
It's distributed, right? It's like it's not that central one domain that's kind of owning. I would say it's really distributed, and maybe even a business IT. You have people sitting together. It's going to be an interesting change for a lot of customers, I feel.
Well, you mentioned the German car companies, and I probably did this first 5 or 6, 7 years ago, but I remember looking at the Siemens website on the one page where they talk about some of their software. You look at that, and if somebody didn't know who Siemens was, they're a software company. And so I'm not saying Siemens should stop being an industrial company. Absolutely not. But if they were able to make that shift, it said, we've got this 150 proud year history of design and engineering and in manufacturing and automation. We're an industrial company. We can't be a software company. If that is true at the corporate level, why can't that be true in the IT organization? Why can't that be true in customer service, any part of the organization? So whatever energy is being expended on keeping your team sort of internally focused and isolated, that's actually, I think, hurting companies. So they got to make that flip. Hard to do, and there's going to be, unfortunately, a lot of, I think, career disruption, and a lot of people are going to be replaced. But I think there's good spots for those people. It can't just be the one that drives and leads, a huge team, because they're keeping people down, and the current environment just doesn't allow for that.
When we look forward, what you already did in your last answer, and of course at the moment everything is overshadowed by two large letters, AI, but there are so many other things of course happening which may be overlooked or even forgotten in this kind of huge shadow that AI at the moment is giving to everything. What do you think are the big, maybe in this shadow, hidden topics that are still painfully relevant for the next 2 to 3 years?
I certainly have a couple thoughts on that. I feel like you guys have been so generous throughout this, asking me questions and letting me, run my mouth up. How about what you guys answer that question? You start off with that, then I'll jump in and follow up. What's your view on it?
I think my answer is definitely clear. It's traction for basically everything. I think I'm a big advocate of the trap value gap, which in my opinion is existing and one of the major factors at the moment between vendors' technology on the one side and customers of the other side. We have to bring that closer together. And I think not everybody is having the right focus on that at the moment. You have different forces happening, change resistance, fear, nervousness, and so on. Maybe also a lack of vision. But I think this kind of traction, which is not so different from customer success in the end, is, in my opinion, the big topics. There is a whole box of innovation still waiting to be realized. And I think it's really time to stop sitting, watching, waiting what happens, but really doing things, really approaching things, starting to learn from application, even maybe without having the most thorough strategy. I think the getting too used to what possibilities exist, I think it's the big topic for the next years, in my opinion.
Yeah. How about you, Johannes?
I think, like from a innovation perspective, of course, AI is going to be like here to stay. But I feel that a lot of co-creation is going to happen, because if you look at those AI cases, and they're usually like centered around like efficiency, generating 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 30 minutes there, but it's probably not in the actual utilization, maybe not really solving a $1 million problem that it can solve. And I think to identify these the scenarios in which it can solve multi-million-dollar problems for an industry, I feel that there will be a lot of co-creation happening going forward between the cloud companies as well as between customers and the cloud companies. And I think next to this co-creation modus, also the way cloud vendors will interact, not within each other. I kind of touched base at it in one of the questions on this one. I think this is the massive change that engagement models is going to come up a lot. How do I, as a partner, engage with my customer to help the customer realize the value? It's having an ecosystem aspect, like with Alex running a consulting company, but it's going to also have like an aspect of how does the cloud vendor, in my case SAP, evolve into a kind of a model that's even closer to customers and even closer to partners. So it's not I should probably come up with a crazy technology disruptive idea, but I think it's like these things that sound small on a micro pattern gonna have massive impact on the whole industry.
Yeah, I sure agree, Johannes. It's not a small thing because it's going to involve everybody, right? Everybody's going to have to get in on that in some ways. Alex, I think you're really onto something with the traction point. Did you realize, Alex, that the letters AI are inside the word traction, and A is the third letter in and I is the third letter from the back? And you
That's
tell
correct.
me that's a coincidence. That is cosmic. No, guys, the traction and the co-creation, co-innovation on these things, I think those are intimately linked, and those have to be those sort of long-ish range goals that we look at while hammering away on things at the beginning. I think one of the simplest things is we've made, Alex, you touched on this a little bit, for too many businesses, the tech industry has made or allowed AI to be perceived as scary, risky, data breaches, data privacy. Robots are going to take over the world. Boom, 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 down the line. There's a great customer story. I think it's a Google Cloud customer, but part of the Richard Branson's Virgin company, it's Virgin Voyages. The CEO of that company, and this is available online, I think YouTube or something, but he has talked about how we made a very purposeful decision inside the company that our move to AI was going to be completely human-centric, not tech-centric. And he said some of the biggest innovations we've seen have been generated by people with almost no tech background. And so they looked at it not as like, oh, I might cause a data breach here. I might, get us in trouble with, the regulators here. I might, all those things. They said, I can get email personalized out much more quickly to the right people. And they said within 2 months, they saw a 28% increase in sales. So they're able to connect that. And he said, now we go back and talk to the people in marketing and customer service and sales. And when we see, a 28% increase in 2 months, then, they get behind it. And they say, let me try this next AI tool. Let me try this next thing. And it's partly about that notion of shared purpose across the whole organization, that we are not isolated by departments and by functions, that somebody used AI over here, really went well. They talked to this department, talked to this one, talked to this. Suddenly things are happening. And somebody says, hey, this agent thing can handle this across 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 of our departments. But until you give the people the reason to believe that they can make this happen and they will be rewarded for it short-term, long-term, and you won't be punished for maybe making a mistake here and there or bumping up against a rule. I was at an event a few months ago, and I was talking to a guy. He's a terrific guy. He happened to be working in the pharmaceutical industry, and he said, man, there's so much great new AI possibility out there. He said, I don't really pay any attention to it because our governance policies will never allow it.
And that's an interesting point, because to bring some private stuff in there, my kids now finally, I try to be as late with that as possible, but finally now I had to give them their first mobile phone, the first smartphone. And although of course they had their fair share in being on the devices of me and of my wife and so on, of course now it's their own thing, and they start to experiment with in a certain frame, of course, but they start to experiment with that. And you see, of course, the joy and of course the kind of, let's say, fun that they have in experiencing these kind of new capabilities that they find with that and so on. And I would really really wish that we grown-up adults living in corporate spaces and so on would win back this kind of curiosity and the kind of fun engaging in these new kind of capabilities and not seeing anything which is out there as a threat from or deviating me from the kind of, let's say, we've done it always that way, and don't come with these kind of new things because it just may get my usual 9 to 5 days of working nervous. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember talking with a professor of mine in college who had worked under Albert Einstein, and he said that one of the greatest things about Einstein was he had the open-mindedness of a child. He said he was childlike, never childish, but childlike. And they said very late in his career, he still had took a certain level of joy in seeing things from a different point of view instead of being always nervous and worried. So, gentlemen, I think that's one of the reasons why, if you not in the tech industry, but among the tech industry's customers across businesses, any business that wants to be successful with its AI experiments, big or small, if the CEO is not the most passionate evangelist and leader and advocate for this, it will fail. Because ultimately it'll get to a point, somebody, oh, no, we can, sure, that might be a nice outcome, but oh, what about this? What about that? What about all these governance things? And meanwhile, your competitors are going to fly past them. So CEOs have to take this on as their top priority.
That's a wonderful pledge for more childlike CEOs. Bob, people, of course, can engage with you. You are omnipresent with Cloud Wars and so on. Are there other possibilities to get in contact with you? Do you have any events on your schedule in the next 3 months where people can meet you and can engage with you? What's on your schedule?
Alex, that's very kind of you. I have a few more things coming up over the next couple of weeks. Our daughters and one son-in-law and 2 granddaughters will be with us over Thanksgiving, which is in a couple of weeks here in the U.S. That is really about all I can think of. And then Christmas. And again, with the Christmas around little kids, is there anything more wonderful than that? So I will be deeply engaging with them and some friends and family around this time. But going into next year, no, I actually, you gave me such a nice opener there, but no, I LinkedIn, I'm very, very happy to talk with people there. It's really been a thrill to get to talk with you guys today. There's been a great conversation. It seems like it was about 10 minutes long, but I know I talked for 98% of it. I'm sorry for that. But you've made it just such a delightful opportunity to share ideas about where this crazy business is headed. It's been a great fun. Thank you so much.
No worries. Our job is to listen and to learn.
Well, me too. Same with me.
Bob, thank you very much for taking your time and spending your time with us. It's been a great pleasure and a great honor. And if there is somebody who is not yet hooked on Cloud Wars, I think after this conversation they will be. Thank you very much.
The digital whiteboard.
Yeah. Can I just show you, since you mentioned that, Johannes?
Absolutely. We got to have it in the picture.
You have the big one, but see, this is the tablet size because it fits in the backpack. So it's also AI powered. The AI port is right back here. It's invisible because it's AI, and you can't really see it. But
and an agent brings it to you and takes it, right?
Agent brings it to the agent, refills the markers, those whiteboard markers. It's great. I encourage everybody to get it. Do you think maybe the 3 of us could get together and we'll start a separate company, talk about this co-creation? Is there a market for these, AI-powered whiteboards? Would everybody want one?
I'm sure.
I'm sure, yes.
I would be the first customer, definitely.
Next all CEOs are going to use the whiteboard to update.
That's the ultimate digital dashboard, right?
Exactly.
Thank you, Johannes. Thank you, Alex. This has really been a blast.
Thank you very
Great to
much.
see you.
Have a great day.
Thank you too. Bye.